Hey guys, and welcome back to Art and Chat. If you guys tuned in for my video last week, then you'll know I just tried some Temu watercolors. Well, this week I'm using my same Temu Marie Chinese watercolors again in a more detailed painting. I've been doing some traveling lately, but of course I'm not gonna just not bring some supplies with me and do some art while I'm away. So currently that's what I'm doing. I'm unwrapping some supplies I brought with me so we can get started. The swatches you saw me do in last week's video was done while I was still at home. However, I also made a gnome sketch that I didn't share with you guys. So in this video, that's what we're going to be working on, perfecting that sketch and preparing it for painting. Now, when I was sketching this gnome, we were just in the beginning of spring, but it snowed since then, and the weather is just insane. So I want to show a painting that is a transition from winter to spring, and maybe it has a little bit of hints of summer in there somewhere, so I have to rework this sketch. When I think of garden gnomes, it reminds me of summer, spring, gardens, foliage, mushrooms, so I'm gonna do a play on that. Usually a gnome always wears this huge hat that seems way too big for their head, and I really wanted to play with the shape of the hat and also what was on the hat. It's always so plain. It's a red hat, no design. It always has a point at the top, and I wanted to do something different. I love that the hats are always so large, and it always makes me think there's something living in their hat, or they have a little hidden city in it. So I played around with that and created windows. And to play around with the garden fairy theme, I also added mushrooms. There was one thing that I really loved about my original design, and I didn't want to stray too far from that, and that was the flowers and the leaves that I had decorating the hat. So instead of putting it on the hat, I decided to incorporate it into the beard of the garden gnome. In my original sketches of the gnome, I was going to do a full body. However, I really liked my sketch of just the head, but I thought I'd give it a chance, and I tried to maybe incorporate some sort of design into the shirt, or maybe just some foliage as the body shape. I didn't really like that, and the space that I was working on really just didn't work with it. I tweak it a little bit later on, but I didn't go with the leaf body. I'm a mixed media artist. You guys know that I need variety and different mediums to work in, but looking for this ink pen was just a mess. It was the thinnest pen in my bag, and it was the hardest to find because of course it went all the way to the bottom, and I just refused to dump my whole pencil case out on the desk and have to scramble to get all the pens and keep them from falling on the floor. So I guess I'm just gonna have to deal with it. I think I should mention that being a mixed media artist for me doesn't just mean I use a bunch of different medias at the same time. I do often use them separately, but I do like to use a bunch of different mediums all at once. I also really love to use different mediums, period. I don't just stick with one medium all the time. I like to change depending on what I want to work on, what media. Now that can mean I use it separately, or that can mean I use multiple mediums for one project. Inking my drawings has to be one of my favorite things to do, even though sometimes it can be so tedious. I really enjoy the process. It's so calming and satisfying to me. And this drawing is no different. I wish I could have gotten a little bit more detail into the leaves, flowers, and petals that I put in the beard of the gnome, but it was so small, it was really hard to get any extra detail, and I didn't want to overdo it at risk of messing it up. Sometimes keeping it simple is the best way to do it, even though I always try to add a lot of detail into what I'm doing, including the gnome drawing that's to test watercolors and see how to use them. So that's just me. As I ink the windows, I can't help but wonder what kind of creatures live in this gnome's hat. Maybe they're caterpillars, possibly snails, or maybe even a fairy or two. Whichever creatures chose to take shelter in this gnome's hat, I think that they're probably warm and safe and cozy in their beds, riding out the winter storms and waiting for the spring to come. I think my favorite thing to ink in this drawing has to be the face and the beard. I loved adding all the little lines to create the hairs and the beard, and I really liked drawing the nose and inking it and creating this round, bulbous shaped nose that all garden gnomes tend to have. About halfway through the inking process, I realized how blank and boring the background was, and that left a problem for me to solve. I thought about maybe doing some flat washes of color, keeping it simple. Of course, I did not keep it simple. I went back to my sketch that I just did, and I realized that I did want to incorporate the leaves that I was going to use for the body in some way. How I was going to do that, I wasn't sure, but in the end, I kind of worked it out. I finally decided what I wanted to do with the background. I wanted to make half represent spring and the other half represent winter. So I created branches on both sides of my background. One side was going to have leaves, which I changed to ivy leaves, and the other side was going to have nothing. I wanted the left side of this background to represent the dormancy of plants during the winter season. of the change of seasons, especially the one from winter to spring, it's always something gradual and beautiful. One day it's cold and breezy, and the next day flowers start to bloom. I did my best to capture a little bit of that essence in this drawing. I really love this little guy and how he turned out, even though he is just supposed to be a drawing so I can test how these watercolors really work and how I can use them. I hope you guys like this little guy as much as I do, and I hope that you'll join me on Friday to see how I paint him. I'll be using the watercolors that I got from Temu. The brand is Marie's Chinese Watercolors. And as I said earlier, I am currently traveling, so I think I'll share a little bit with you guys on how I prepared those paints to bring with me. Thank you guys for joining me for this little art and chat, and I hope you enjoyed the art that we made today. I hope to see you guys on Friday for the coloring in of this drawing, and thank you for watching.